This is a continuation of the Understanding Scriptures, Words and Phrases exercise portion. We ran into a little bit of problem in presenting the original message because we just plain ran out of time. We were approaching the Sabbath far too quickly, and we had to quit early. Therefore, I have decided to redo the exercise portion and present it in this format. I hope that you enjoy it. To begin, I want to take a single verse in Scripture and analyze it carefully. I want to look up the words in both Hebrew and English. I want to compare some of those words that we find with other verses in Scripture and see them in their similar context and so forth. These two exercises, or two parts of this exercise, are what I usually do when I want to examine some Scripture in greater detail. So I present this for your use if you wish to use this particular method or these particular methods. Okay, for this exercise, we're going to take an in-depth look at a particular Scripture verse, and then later on we're going to compare it to other verses. We are going to analyze the Hebrew in this verse word by word. We're also going to search for each of the words in the Scriptures to see how it is used by both context and meaning. For this exercise, I want to use the Bible program eSword. Now, you can get this on the internet from e-sword.net. It is a good program. It has a reasonable search engine, and the best part, of course, is that it is free, which is our favorite price. Now, this program, you can add to it other scriptures that you may happen to have. I have set it up with the Scriptures, 1998 version, and a few other particular Bibles that I like. I do use the King James because it is a reference Bible. Seems to me everybody has one, so they don't have a problem with looking at it. And I'll also want to show you how you can look up words in this, both the Hebrew/Greek meanings of these words. All right, the scripture we want to look at, I'm going to take it from the 1998 version of the Scriptures, Yeshayahu 66, verse 17. And that says, "Those who set themselves apart and cleanse themselves at the gardens after one in the midst, eating the flesh of pigs and the abomination and the mouse are snatched away together, declares Yahweh." This is a screen capture of eSword, and we are looking at the particular verse, Yeshayahu or Isaiah 66:17. And there you see the verse. This is how we like to look things up. There's another possible program that is available. Now, this is on the internet. It's a good internet tool. It's called BibleHub.com. I think it used to be called Biblios.com or something like that a little while ago. They seem to have changed their name. The advantage to this particular book or this particular page is it allows you to look up a verse. You can have the interlinear, the Hebrew, you look up the lexicons or the dictionaries, compare and find out what the words mean. You can look up Strong's. There's even Parallel, where you can compare that particular verse to many other versions. This is a good program, or this is a good web page. I like to use it a lot, especially like it because of its interlinear. Of course, the other choice is you can buy an interlinear from anybody, and they're going to run anywhere. Well, they're going to run a lot. You may be dealing with something close to $100 for a book. So this is good. This is free. Now, for Hebrew, I have found that this particular website, Macon Memre, is very useful. It will give us the particular scripture verse in the Hebrew on one side of the screen, and in the English according to the Jewish Publication Society's 1917 edition, which is a very good edition of the Tanakh. There are a few other features in this particular website. I do encourage you to take a look at it and try using it if you understand Hebrew or can read Hebrew. All right, let's get going. What I want to do is look at several versions of scriptures to see what each one of them is saying about my target verse here. So here we have the scriptures, the 1998 version of it, and I think the newer one says about the same exact thing. And it says, "Those who set themselves apart and cleanse themselves at the gardens after one, in the midst, eating the flesh of pigs, and the abomination, and the mouse, are snatched away together, declares Yahweh." The King James Version of this same verse says, "They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one tree in the midst, eating swine flesh, and the abomination, and the mouse, shall be consumed together, saith the Lord." Now, in the eSword version, the King James has a King James Plus, which gives you the Hebrew Strong's number after many of the words. So here we see "they that sanctify themselves," and that's H6942. The word "sanctify" is Strong's H6942. We could go look that up, especially if we don't really understand Hebrew very well, or we don't have those resources, and we can still get the same definitions as we would if we looked in a lexicon or a dictionary. Be aware that Strong's is NTOC, so as we said before in another message. We could also, now here's the Jewish Publication Society, JPS, of the 1917 version, and it says, "They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves, to go on to the gardens, behind one in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the detestable thing, and the mouse, shall be consumed together, saith the Lord." The Hebrew Roots Bible, which I happen to have somehow on my eSword, says, "Those who sanctify themselves and purify themselves to the gardens, each one in the midst, eaters of swine flesh, and the hateful thing, and the mouse, these are cut off together, saith Yahweh," says Yahweh. Now, I don't remember if I explained this before. The Targums is another version of the Hebrew scriptures, but instead of being in Hebrew, it's actually in Aramaic. The idea is this is an expansion of the text, almost they're giving us their conclusions. This isn't exactly the 100% Hebrew scriptures, so sometimes we may read it and say, "Gee, where'd they come up with that?" But it's a very useful method of finding a little greater depth in the text that we're reading. And in Isaiah or Yeshayahu 66:17 it says, "They who prepare and purify themselves in the gardens of idols, multitude after multitude, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination, and the mouse, shall be consumed together, saith the Lord." So I looked on the Hebrew English Bible by Macomb Memory, that website I showed you, and this is what we have for that particular verse, Yeshayahu 66:17. This is what it looks like. And we can analyze each word carefully and come up with some conclusions. Now, the other thing is we see each word, and as we've already explained, in Hebrew there is a shoresh, a root of the word. It is usually, almost always, 3 letters, which tells us what that word is actually is. And then you have prefixes and suffixes that do other things to the word. So this is what we see, and we can look at this carefully, which we're going to. The Hebrew English Bible by Macomb Memory and its interlinear is this particular, what we see here. Now, it says, it breaks up each of these words, as we see with the little dashes there. The first word is the ones consecrating themselves. That's what that particular word says all at one time. The next word is and, the ones purifying themselves. And then the next word would be for the gardens, following one, in the midst, one's eating of, flesh of, the pig, and the abomination, and the rat, together. They will meet and, declares Yahweh. That's how you have to read Hebrew. Sometimes it doesn't follow our English syntax, but this is Hebrew syntax. Method 1. Method 1 is examining the Hebrew text, and we're going to do a word-by-word translation. In Yeshayahu 66:17, we find that it is a description of the detestable rites of idolatry. Now this verse turns out to actually be a continuation of verse 3. The first word is Hamit Kadshim. Now the root of that particular word is Kuf Daled Shin, which means to be set apart. It's the same word we find in Kadosh, or the same 3 letters we find in Kadosh, which is set apart. We see that the idolaters are setting themselves apart in order to worship their idols. This is important to understand. They believe that they have to be in a particular, how would you call it? Like a state of mind and a state of pureness and a state of everything in order to worship their whatever it is that they believe in. In a way, this is copying us. We want to set ourselves apart because we worship Yahweh. They're doing exactly the same thing, and the same words are used. The second word that we encounter is V'hamit Takarim. Now the root of this particular word is Tet He Resh, which is the same word as Tahor, and it means to be ritually pure, to purify, or to be ritually clean. We've encountered this word a great deal in our own studies. The idolaters want to make themselves pure according to their particular belief system in order to approach their gods, goddesses, or whatever it is that they're dealing with. The third words is actually 2 words. You can see that by the makef between al and haganot. Al, or el, is implying a particular direction. It means go or come. According to the rabbis, it also seems to have a sexual connotation or a relationship to sexual activities. The idolaters are going to go toward some place for the purpose of their worship. Now, this word may also imply that the worship may consist of sexual activity that we just discussed, and they may be preparing for it, whatever that might mean. The other part of the third word, haganot, has as its root gan. Gan means garden, just a bunch of trees, plants, flowers, stuff like that. Really nice place. The ganot tells us that it's a plural word, and it tells us that it's a feminine word. So the gardens are feminine plural in this case. The gardens may be a very, very beautiful place, and it's a good place for worship or to have some kind of sexual thing going on. The gardens may have an Asherah pole. They may have other phallic symbols, such as, well, gee, what's that pointy thing in Washington, D.C.? Yeah? Oh, okay. And there's also the pointy thing at the place in Rome where the Pope kind of hangs out. The gardens were also the favorite places for heathen worship. They wanted to be in these kinds of environments which would give them feelings of beauty and peace and serenity while they worshiped their idols. All right, the fourth word is achar, and this means after or behind, implying following. The next word is echad or achat, and that means one. So that somebody is going to follow one. Now I got this from a particular book written by a man named Schlottke, and he has spent a great deal of time. He wrote this book called Isaiah, if you will forgive me, and it is a detailed discussion and description of Isaiah. For this particular verse, he says something very interesting. And he says that behind one, now one particular codex reads that the word is as a masculine word, and another one reads it as a feminine word. The former could denote that the leader of the procession is a male priest, and I think of this as the Pope. The latter may denote a goddess of some kind, and it may even possibly be the Asherah. Maimonides explains that one tree in the midst is an indulgence, or meaning an indulgence in forbidden lust. There are other possibilities found in this very simple phrase, behind one. Okay, the fifth word, tavek, in the midst or the middle of, inside or the center. This is describing a location. And these people are going to go into the middle, inside the center of the particular garden. They want to find a place where they're not viewed from the outside. The sixth word is achal, and this means simply to eat or to consume. And the sixth word is besar or basar, and it means flesh, meat, skin, just what it says, meat. The sixth word, chazir. This actually has far greater meaning than I want to discuss at this time. There's much more to chazir than we see here, but the word itself just means a pig or a wild boar. Now this is what they're going to eat, this pig or wild boar, this chazir. And it is a clear violation of Vayikra chapter 11, Yahweh's food commandments. It is a deliberate disobedience to Yahweh's commands. It is a part of the idolater's worship. It is a way in which they can demonstrate a sort of spitting at Yahweh. For sure, eating the pig is rebellion. Rebellion is a thing that Yahweh does not like. It is the biggest sin that he understands. Many people are in rebellion. And we see this a little bit when we'll look at verse 3. They might as well if a person's in rebellion, they might as well just go right on ahead and be idolaters as far as he is concerned. All right, the seventh word is sheketz. Now, it's a detestable thing, abomination, or unclean. Now, it could be a snake, but I can't find anything that actually tells me that it's a snake. What I do find is that it is just an unclean thing. Now, it could be, we don't know what this thing abominable or detestable is that they're eating. It could be a broth or a soup made out of pig. It could be any other kind of unclean thing. But it is clearly something that Yahweh has either forbidden or shows rebellion against Yahweh's commands. And then achbar is a mouse or a rat, a rodent. Recently I saw on Facebook this nice little picture of a squirrel, and somebody was saying something about, gee, that'd be awful nice. We take them squirrels and fry them up and cover them in gravy. No, they are tree rats. And it is rebellion to eat tree rats. The rat being another unclean creature, or the mouse being another unclean creature. Now, the juxtaposition, wow, what a word. Okay, the juxtaposition of the pig, the abomination, or detestable, the mouse. Is Yeshayahu telling us the pig being worst, absolute worst, abomination being less worse, the mouse being even less still? Is he trying to show that there are three levels, big level, medium level, little level? Or is he just saying those three things, no matter what, are still completely unclean? Is he trying to tell us that no matter what, by eating, consuming, or having anything to do with this stuff, we are in rebellion against Yahweh, and we've joined ourselves to the idolaters? Is this possible? Can this possibly mean that someone today, we don't think of idolatry today. We don't go into gardens and bow down to statues or these pyramid things or any of this other kind of stuff. Well, I mean, not everybody. But by the consumption of these, remember the word that we had back a while ago is that the word akal is to eat, consume, chew on, eat it up. And then they're eating the meat, the basar, they're eating the food. And that stuff is consisting of these three abominable things. So in our culture today, if we're eating pig, ham sandwich, BLT, bacon and eggs, are we in the same position as those people were way back in Yeshayahu's time? My answer to that's yes, because that's what he's saying. By eating that stuff, by physically consuming it, and it's a deliberate act. That verb is an action verb. It's not something that's accidental. They do it deliberately. They are in rebellion against Yahweh, and in fact, worshiping idols, whether they're actually bowing down to one or not. All right, the next word that we come across is yakdav, which means together at the same time. All of them. Now, this isn't telling us that their catching up will be sudden and all of them will be caught up at the same time. Now, I've thought about this a little bit. Is this what the Christian rapture is about? They think they're going to be caught up and taken to heaven, which there isn't really any scripture that says so, but that's where they get the idea from. What this catching up And the suddenness of the catching up is telling us it's Yahweh that's doing it. We're not going to be able to go out there and like shoot all the idolaters or capture them or execute them or any of that kind of thing in a sudden fashion or catching away kind of a fashion. This brings to mind the story that Yeshua told us of the wheat and the tares. They both look alike as far as plants go. Now that's what I've been told. I really and honestly do not know. I've never seen it myself. But at some time, when the harvest comes, the tares will be removed suddenly, quickly, and burned. Is this the same thing? I'm thinking that it is. All right, the next word is yasufu, which means coming to an end, done. The idolaters will be gone. They won't be any more. They won't even be seen again. They are no longer going to be here. Poof. They are gone. And there's nothing really they can do about it, and there's nothing we can do, in fact, to make it happen faster. We know this is a thing to come, but yet we don't have the ability to push it along, if you will. Yahweh's the one that's going to do it. Okay, the next word is Yahum. Excuse me, Nehum. I mispronounced. Nehum, which means an utterance, a pronouncement, a revelation. This is words that Yahweh, the last word, actually speaks. Because he speaks it, that's it. It's signed, sealed, it is delivered, it will happen, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it. All right, as you've seen here in method 1, we've taken each of the words and we've looked up their definition. Now, if you don't know Hebrew, this is fine. You can go ahead and use eSword and use the, as I showed you, the King Jimmy Plus, or you could go ahead and go to the website Bible Hub and do an interlinear on it or whatever, and look up each one of these words specifically and carefully. Now, I like to not just, oh, okay, I got the definition, that's it, I know what the word means. I like to think about what that word is saying, like we've already done. I like to discuss it with myself and see what's being said here. Now, if you look in some of the dictionaries, you're going to find that these words with the roots that they have, okay, remember that shorish, the three-letter root? You may see similarities in the other words near that particular root. For example, we went all the way back to the first word where we saw Kodesh or Kadosh as a part of that word, as the root of that word. Well, let's go look up the rest of it and examine what that word means. Now, we spoke about it in I think whatever the other part was before this one of this message, where we talked about Kadosh versus holy. And we got to see that there is way more to this word kadosh than we might suspect. This may help you now. Now, this particular verse, there was really no big surprises except for the word chazir, or pig. But then that isn't going to be found in what I had discovered is not going to be found in many of the dictionaries and so forth. We would see that there's other writers that have written other material, and we start to see other secrets, other things at the sod level in Scripture that we could take this verse and kind of compare it, slide it over to some other things. But that's probably for another exercise. Nonetheless, that's what we did. We took each word, examined each word, and we have a list of definitions. You could write this out somewhere, or however you want to look at it, and see what it is Yeshayahu told us.